The Johnston mansion stood behind wrought iron gates in Lake Oswego, Oregon. 6,000 square feet of fieldstone and leaded glass that had been in the family for 3 generations. Inside, a 15-foot noble fir sparkled with ornaments collected from decades of European vacations. White orchids lined the marble foyer. Caterers in black ties moved silently. It was Christmas Eve, and everything looked perfect. Caroline Johnston fastened a strand of Mikomoto pearls at her throat. Her husband, Robert, decanted a 2004 Chateau Margaux like it was any other Tuesday. And in the center of it all, twirling in a backless crimson gown, stood 27-year-old Tessa Johnston. She held up her left hand, catching the light on a 5-carat diamond. Her fiancé, Marcus Webb, stood behind her, the same Marcus who had ended things with her older sister 18 months earlier. The front door opened. Cold December air swept in. Natalie Johnston stepped inside, 32 years old, dressed in the same Ann Taylor blazer she'd worn to the office that morning. She carried a sad little jade plant in a ceramic pot. Her eyes were red-rimmed from the 3-hour drive down from Seattle, where she'd spent the morning cleaning out her desk. The ad agency had eliminated her entire department.
Tessa spun around with theatrical concern. Oh my God, again? She didn't bother lowering her voice. Wasn't this job number 3 in 4 years? Marcus gave Natalie that same condescending half smile. Brutal market right now. I just closed my Series B, $42 million pre-money. Robert didn't look up from his wine. Natalie, we need to talk. No invitation to sit. No glass of champagne.
He got straight to it. Last month, I amended the family trust. All of it. $41 million in liquid assets, the commercial real estate portfolio, your grandmother's jewelry. It's now in Tessa's name only. Irrevocable. Caroline adjusted a gold ornament on the tree, refusing to meet Natalie's eyes. You're 32, sweetheart. Capable. It's time you stood on your own.
Natalie stood frozen, trying to process that her parents had legally erased her while she was still standing in their foyer. Tessa pulled out her phone, already filming. This is gold. Big sis comes home broke on Christmas Eve. Say something for my followers, Nat. Natalie looked at her father. You're serious? He met her eyes for the first time that night. Cold. Final. You have 20 minutes.
She walked upstairs on autopilot. The bedroom she'd had since she was 12 still had her high school debate trophies on the shelf. She threw jeans into an old Toomey bag, 2 sweaters, laptop, toiletries. Everything else, books, photo albums, the quilt her grandmother had made, would have to wait. When she came back down, Tessa was still live on Instagram. Robert opened the front door himself. The fog had rolled in thick from the Willamette River. The temperature had dropped below freezing. Natalie stepped over the threshold. Behind her, Tessa called out, voice sweet as poisoned candy. Merry Christmas, Natalie. Don't freeze. The door closed with a soft, expensive click. The alarm beeped twice as it armed. In under 30 minutes, she had gone from daughter to trespasser. She stood on the marble steps in the dark, one bag at her feet, wearing the only warm thing she still owned. A long cashmere coat she'd bought with her first bonus check. The wheels of her suitcase rattled over the perfect pavement. Every mansion she passed had warm golden windows, Christmas trees glowing behind gated driveways, laughter spilling out. Each one reminded her she no longer belonged anywhere. She walked until she found herself in the small public garden beside the old Episcopal church, one iron bench under a working street lamp. She sat down hard, dropped the suitcase handle, and finally let the tears come. She cried for every birthday where Tessa got the bigger present. She cried because she had always believed that if she just worked harder, they would finally see her. Turns out none of it mattered. That was when she heard it, the slow scrape of bare feet on frozen concrete. She looked up and saw her, an elderly woman, shuffling toward the bench, silver hair tangled and loose, thin shoulders hunched against the wind, skin so pale it looked translucent under the lamp. She wore only a thin house dress, and her feet were bare, already turning that dangerous purple gray. She stopped a few feet away, swaying slightly. "Young lady, do you know if any of the shelters still have room tonight? I've been walking up from Oregon City. Everything's full." Natalie wiped her face quickly. "I'm sorry, I don't have anywhere either." The woman studied her for a long moment, then lowered herself onto the bench beside her, leaving a careful distance. They sat in silence. Natalie noticed the woman's feet again. The color was getting worse. Something inside her cracked open. Here was someone who had even less than she did tonight, and she was still polite enough to ask instead of demand. Without thinking twice, Natalie stood, slipped off the only thing keeping her from freezing, and draped it around the woman's shoulders. The woman looked startled, then closed her eyes as the warmth hit her. Her thin, veined hands reached up and pulled the fabric tighter. When she opened her eyes, they were shining with tears. "What's your name, child?" "Natalie." She repeated it softly, like she was tasting something precious. "Thank you, Natalie." Then she took both of Natalie's freezing hands in hers, squeezed once, and held her gaze. No words, just understanding. After what felt like forever, she let go, stood with new steadiness, and gave the smallest smile. Then she walked away, slowly swallowed by the night. Natalie sat back down alone, colder than she had ever been in her life. But for the first time since that door closed, the ache in her chest felt different, lighter, like giving away the last thing she had somehow gave her something back. The motel room on 82nd Avenue smelled like stale cigarettes. Natalie had been staring at the same laptop screen for 2 days, applying to anything that paid above minimum wage, when her phone rang. "Miss Natalie Johnston?" The voice was crisp, professional. "This is Patricia Chen calling on behalf of Mrs. Evelyn Prescott. She would like to meet with you immediately." Natalie laughed out loud. It sounded like a prank. Who is this really? The line stayed silent for 2 beats. "Mrs. Prescott will explain everything. A car is waiting outside room 112. Natalie looked through the peephole. 19 identical black Mercedes S-Class sedans lined the cracked parking lot like a presidential motorcade. The lead car's rear door opened by itself. She was waiting in the middle car, the woman from the bench, hair now in an elegant silver chignon, camel hair coat cinched at the waist, diamond studs catching the weak winter sun. She looked 78, going on ageless. "Natalie," she said gently, as if they were old friends. The door closed with a soft thud. A privacy partition rose. They pulled away. 20 minutes later, the gates opened to a 1920s Tudor mansion on a quiet cul-de-sac in Dunthorpe, hidden behind ancient oaks and a 12-foot hedge. Natalie had driven past this street 1,000 times and never known it existed. Inside smelled of cedar and roses. A fire crackled in a stone hearth big enough to stand in. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over a private stretch of the Willamette River. My full name is Evelyn Prescott. My late husband founded Prescott Commercial Real Estate. When he passed, I took the company private and turned the profits into the Prescott Family Foundation. We own or finance over 400 million square feet of commercial space. The foundation distributes roughly $130 million a year. Natalie just stared. Her brain couldn't process the numbers. Every Christmas Eve for the last 25 years, I do one thing the same. I leave the estate dressed as someone who has nothing. I walk until I find someone who still has a heart when they believe no one is watching. Most years I walk all night and go home disappointed. This year, I found you. She explained that her security team had watched Natalie for 48 hours, watched her give away her coat, watched her never once try to find out who the homeless woman was. You're the first person in 17 years who gave away the last thing keeping them alive without expecting anything back. I have no children, no heirs. When I'm gone, strangers on a board will decide where my money goes. I want someone who understands what it feels like to be thrown away on Christmas Eve, to decide how we help the next person who gets thrown away. I'm offering you a room here, a salary, a 5-year apprenticeship. Natalie opened her mouth, closed it. Why me? Because, Mrs. Prescott said, eyes fierce. I know exactly what it feels like to sit on a freezing bench with nowhere to go and still choose kindness. I was 31 when my own mother did it to me. I promised myself, if I ever got the chance, I'd make sure no one who chose right in that moment stayed lost. She extended her hand. Will you come home with me?
Natalie moved into the East Wing the following Monday. Her new bedroom was bigger than her parents' entire downstairs. Patricia Chen handed her a leather binder the thickness of a phone book. Welcome to boot camp. The first month was brutal. 6 a.m. runs with a former Navy SEAL, 7:30 breakfast meetings learning tax returns, 9 to 6 in board meetings, evenings dissecting grant archives until her eyes burned.
Mrs. Prescott didn't want another rich kid playing philanthropist. Her favorite line became, "We don't give fish. We don't even give fishing lessons. We buy the whole damn river and make sure everyone can eat forever." She enrolled Natalie in Stanford's executive program. 3 nights a week, Natalie drove 5 hours round trip to Palo Alto. Weekends meant site visits, domestic violence shelters, after-school programs, veteran housing.
Natalie rewrote the entire grant process. Shorter forms, faster decisions, mandatory site visits. Mrs. Prescott bled red ink over every draft, then made Natalie defend each change in front of the full board. There were nights she fell asleep with her face on a spreadsheet. Mornings she cried in the shower, feeling like an imposter. But every time she wanted to quit, she remembered sitting on that freezing bench with nothing, and she kept going.
June arrived, hot and sudden. One Thursday morning, Mrs. Prescott texted, "Library, now." Natalie walked in expecting another 12-hour strategy session. Instead, Mrs. Prescott was alone, sunlight pouring through stained glass windows, holding a single folder. She didn't sit. She slid the folder across the mahogany table and stayed standing.
Inside was an employment agreement. Title, President and Chief Executive Officer, Prescott Family Foundation. Base salary, $210,000. 3% equity in the foundation's endowment, currently valued at just under $4 billion. Full decision-making authority starting year 3. Natalie looked up, speechless. Mrs. Prescott finally sat, folding her hands. I didn't bring you here because you gave away a coat. I brought you here because of who you became when no one was watching.
I watched you fight for a domestic violence shelter that every banker wanted to defund. I watched you sit on a folding chair in East Portland until midnight, listening to a 16-year-old girl. I watched you rewrite a 70-page policy manual because one paragraph would have left transgender kids without beds. You have the mind I need and the heart I lost a long time ago. The foundation is yours to run.
Natalie tried to say thank you, but nothing came out. Mrs. Prescott waved it off. Sign it before I change my mind. Natalie laughed through tears and signed. That night, they opened a 1982 Chateau Margaux on the terrace, just the two of them, watching the sun drop behind the oaks. To the girl who had every reason to become bitter and chose kindness anyway. And to the woman who refused to let one good deed stay invisible.
October smelled like wet leaves and money in Cortland. Natalie was in her corner office on the 20th floor of the KON tower when Patricia knocked once. Your sister and Marcus Webb are downstairs. No appointment. Natalie felt her stomach drop. Send them up. They walked in looking like they rehearsed the performance. Tessa in a modest navy sheath. Marcus in a suit that almost fit, both carrying practiced smiles.
Tessa spoke first, voice soft. Natalie, I've been awful. We've been awful. I'm so sorry for everything. Marcus nodded vigorously. We're getting married next spring. Tessa took a breath. Dad's in trouble. Some investments went south. He and Mom might lose the house. And Marcus's new company needs $2 million to close the seed round. We wouldn't ask if it wasn't life or death.
Natalie raised an eyebrow. Which part is life or death? Dad's mortgage or your valuation? Marcus forced a chuckle. $2 million is nothing to the foundation. Natalie leaned back. Tell me what happened to the $41 million trust fund you took last December. Tessa's mask flickered. We diversified. Crypto, NFTs. Most of it's gone. Market downturn. Marcus jumped in. We just need a bridge.
Natalie opened a folder. Screenshots, bank records, a Portland Business Journal article. Johnston heiress blows inheritance on meme coins. She turned it around. 87% gone in 11 months. You bought a Lamborghini, put a deposit on a condo in Miami, paid influencers to promote shitcoins. That's not a downturn. That's arson. Tessa's mask slipped completely. You're going to let Mom and Dad go homeless?
Natalie pressed the intercom. Security to 20, please. Marcus tried sweet reason. $2 million is petty cash. The door opened. 2 guards stepped in. Natalie stood. This foundation exists for people who never had a safety net. Not for people who lit theirs on fire and now want mine. You're not getting a dime. Not today, not ever. Tessa went scarlet. You ungrateful. She pulled out her phone, recording as the guards took her elbows.
By the time they reached the lobby, 3 news vans and a local blogger were waiting. Someone had tipped them off. Tessa went full performance. Tears, trembling lip. The video hit TikTok within 20 minutes. My billionaire sister won't even help our parents keep their house. It blew up. 12 million views in 6 hours. Then the internet did what the internet does best.
Old classmates posted yearbook photos of Tessa dumping yogurt on Natalie's backpack. Someone found the Instagram Live from Christmas Eve. A former nanny went on record about the way Tessa used to lock Natalie out of the house. The comments flipped. Hashtag Johnston Family Exposed trended. Marcus's seed round deck leaked. 90. Natalie never posted a single word. By midnight, the video was age restricted. The blogger issued a groveling apology. Tessa's follower count dropped by half. Patricia poured Natalie a finger of scotch that night. Poetic justice tastes better when you don't have to lift a finger. Natalie raised the glass to the dark window. No, it tastes like closure. November brought cold fog that never quite lifted. The news broke on a Tuesday. West Coast Capital collapses. $4.2 billion Ponzi scheme unravels. Robert Johnston had moved every remaining dollar into the fund 6 months earlier. The guaranteed 18% annual return was supposed to get them back on track. The FBI raided the offices. The founder was already on a yacht somewhere off Cabo. 30 days later, the foreclosure notice appeared on the Lake Oswego mansion's front door. No bidders showed up at the auction. The bank took title. Robert, Caroline, and Tessa moved into a 2-bedroom apartment above a nail salon on 122nd Avenue. Rent, $2,300 a month, all they could afford. After the bankruptcy, Tessa's credit cards were maxed at $212,000. Collection agencies called nonstop. They showed up at the foundation without an appointment on a rainy Thursday morning. Security called up. Natalie told them to let the 3 of them in. Robert looked 20 years older, hair white, shoulders curved. Caroline had cut her hair short and dyed it cheap brown. Tessa wore no makeup, clutching a knockoff tote like a life raft. Natalie met them in the small glass conference room. No water, no coffee.
Robert spoke first, voice cracking. "Natalie, you're my daughter. I know we hurt you. We have nowhere else to turn. The apartment lease ends in 6 weeks. We're going to be on the street." Caroline stared at the table, twisting a tissue. Tessa looked up, eyes red. "Please, just enough for a fresh start. We'll sign anything. We'll never ask again."
Natalie opened a slim black folder and laid 3 business cards on the wood. A financial planner specializing in bankruptcy recovery, a free debt management program, a mental health crisis hotline. This is what the Prescott Foundation can do for strangers who lost everything through no fault of their own. It's the same help we offer anyone who walks in here broke and scared.
Robert's hand shook as he reached for the cards, then stopped. "That's it? After 32 years?" Natalie stood. "You had choices. You chose to rewrite the trust. You chose to chase returns that sounded too good to be true. You chose to stay silent when Tessa humiliated me for sport. Those were your decisions, not mine." Caroline finally looked at her, tears streaming. "We were wrong. We're so sorry."
I believe you're sorry now, but sorry doesn't rebuild a life. Work does. Courage does. Taking responsibility does. Tessa started sobbing. "You're enjoying this. You want us to suffer." Natalie walked to the door and held it open. "No, I just refuse to pay for your suffering anymore." Security escorted them out. Robert never looked back. Caroline whispered, "I'm sorry," one last time. Tessa kept crying until they reached the lobby. Patricia handed Natalie a tissue she didn't realize she needed. "They'll be okay. People who hit bottom either stay there or start climbing. You just gave them the only ladder we're allowed to give." Natalie nodded. watching the rain streak down the windows. For the first time, the ache in her chest was gone. Not replaced by joy, just by space. Room to breathe.
The sky over East Portland was the color of steel on opening day. Second home rose like a promise kept. 4 stories of glass and reclaimed wood, wrapped around a courtyard where kids were already chasing each other. 3,000 people filled the plaza, families who would live here, donors, city council members, every major network, even the governor there to cut the ribbon.
Natalie stood backstage in a simple black suit, heart hammering. Patricia squeezed her hand once. Mrs. Prescott, elegant in winter white, gave the smallest nod from the front row. This was the project Natalie had bled for. 200 permanent supportive apartments, on-site medical clinic, job training center, preschool, and a policy that no one would ever be turned away for lack of paperwork.
The mayor finished. The crowd roared when her name was called. Natalie walked to the podium. She looked out over the sea of faces. Near the back, almost hidden behind a column, stood Robert, Caroline, and Tessa. Robert in an old navy peacoat, Caroline clutching coffee, Tessa with short hair, small without designer labels. Natalie let the silence sow for 3 full seconds. 2 years ago tonight, I was thrown out of the only home I'd ever known, with 1 suitcase and no place to go. I learned that night what it feels like when the people who are supposed to catch you drop you instead. A ripple moved through the crowd. Camera zoomed. I also learned something else on a freezing park bench. Real family isn't DNA. Real family is the stranger who chooses to see you when you're invisible.
This is second home. 200 families will never again have to sleep in their cars. Kids will never again do homework in the back seat because the lights got shut off. And every single person who walks through those doors will be told the same thing I needed to hear that Christmas Eve. You are not disposable. You are not alone. You are home.
The applause exploded. Natalie waited, then spoke again, softer. Tonight, we open these doors for every person who has ever been told they don't belong, especially for those who were told it by the people who were supposed to love them most. She looked straight across the plaza, directly at the 3 figures in the back. Robert's shoulders shook. Caroline covered her mouth. Tessa stared at the ground.
Natalie didn't smile. She didn't scowl. She simply held their gaze for 1 heartbeat longer than comfort allowed. Then she stepped away from the podium. The governor cut the ribbon. The marching band struck up. Children rushed forward with flowers. Natalie walked down the steps, through the crowd, and headed for the main entrance. Robert tried to step forward. Natalie. She kept walking. Not fast, not slow, just forward.
Carolyn reached out a hand that never touched her. Tessa opened her mouth, closed it, and for the first time in her life, said nothing at all. Natalie passed within 2 feet of them without breaking stride. The massive reclaimed wood doors of second home opened automatically. Warm light spilled out. She crossed the threshold. The doors closed behind her with a soft, final sound. She never looked back. Not because she hated them, not because she needed to prove anything, but because she finally understood. Forgiveness doesn't mean reopening the door that hurt you. Sometimes it simply means walking through a new one and letting the old one stay shut.
Inside, a little boy in a Spider-Man jacket tugged her sleeve. "Are you the lady who built this place?" Natalie knelt so they were eye to eye. "I'm one of them." He offered her a dandelion he'd picked from the courtyard. "For you, because you gave us a home." Natalie took the flower, and for the first time in a long time, she smiled like she meant it.
3 years later, the photograph ran in the Oregonian on Christmas morning. Natalie Johnston sat on the front steps of Second Home, surrounded by children from the on-site preschool. She was laughing, really laughing. In the background, residents decorated a massive tree. The caption read, "Second Home celebrates 3rd anniversary. Founder Natalie Johnston. This is what family looks like." In a small apartment on 122nd Avenue, Tessa set down the newspaper. Her husband, Marcus, had left 6 months ago. She was 30 now, working 40 hours a week at a dental office front desk, paying off debt. Her parents had moved to a smaller place. Robert volunteered at a food bank. Caroline started an Etsy shop. Tessa looked at the photograph for a long time. Then she folded it and placed it in a drawer. Somewhere across town, in a rose garden that smelled like winter jasmine, Natalie poured 2 cups of tea and carried them to the terrace where Evelyn sat wrapped in a cashmere blanket. "Merry Christmas, Evelyn." "Merry Christmas, my girl." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the river flow past. "I used to think family was something you were born into," Natalie said quietly. "Now I know it's something you choose, something you build, something you protect." Evelyn smiled. "Took you long enough to figure that out." Natalie laughed. "You're the one who taught me." They raised their cups to the river, to the city, to the thousands sleeping safely. Somewhere in the distance, a child's laugh carried on the wind. The future had begun.
If this story touched you, drop a comment with the city you're watching from. Share this with someone who needs to hear that family isn't always blood, and that kindness, even when no one's watching, has a way of finding its way back to you. Subscribe for more stories of justice, redemption, and the power of choosing right when everything goes wrong. See you in the next one.